Hey guys, welcome to another installment. Today we are talking about Niccolo Machiavelli and his really famous text, The Prince. You're going to be reading that. And so this is just a little quick introduction to Machiavelli. He wrote the first purely secular political treatise in the West, meaning he wrote an argument on how a leader should govern, how politics should work without the involvement of the church. So it's a totally secular approach to leadership, no religious involvement. This was inspired by what was happening in Republican Rome centuries before, taking a look at what they had done there that was successful and trying to make an argument to his target audience how a good leader should rule. He champions power politics, which means, just like it sounds, seeking power to rule, that the most powerful rule comes from individuals who maintain their power and execute it. So he's going to ask a lot of controversial questions, or rather give answers to controversial questions about the ruthlessness that a ruler should have. He sees Christianity in government as problematic and, like the note says, even a disaster. So he was one of the early writers to say the church needed to stay out of government. And in fact, church does not help government at all. He said the church should stick to their business, which is the spiritual realm, and they should have nothing to do with politics and government. His target audience, like I mentioned, is specifically Lorenzo Medici. He sees him as the prince, not a literal prince, but a person with power who is one of the most influential rulers in the city-state of Florence. He says success means exercising power, not ideals or values or like inclusivity of who you're ruling or reliance on God. It's just about maintaining power for the ruler. He's also pragmatic, which means if it works, if it's useful, if it's successful, that's what you should do. But that makes sense. Like, that sounds good. Do what works. But he's saying do anything that works. So whatever works, you should do that. He says be sly like a fox and brutal like a lion. So he takes sort of extremes, and he's, like I said, pretty controversial for taking that stance. His goal in writing this is to get Lorenzo to toughen up and follow his ideas and to get out outsiders, to kick out outsiders of Florence, who were at this time the French, wanting to just have a city led by the Florentine people for the Florentine people. So he's about Florence first, I guess you could say, and getting rid of anybody who isn't Florentine in the city, especially the oppressors, outside influences. So here we are taking a closer look at what I want you to do when you read. You're going to read the text of Machiavelli, and I listed out for you in your notes. It's either a Google Doc or a hard copy document, but I wrote your names in specific sections that I want you to take notes on. The thinking is that you would read the whole thing, but you would be closely reading your sections, and you might have 1, 2, or 3 sections. So make sure you look through the packet to find your name. Take good notes, because I'll have you lead the conversation on that section or those sections. And of course, I'll be there to help you out, and I'll chime in. So if you're confused, it's okay. This is a little bit tough, but I want you to try give your best effort on what it's saying, and we'll put our heads together to make sure we understand. So these are the elements of argument. This dates back to the Greek writers, who believed by having a sound logical argument that consists of these components, you could make a good case and get what you wanted. And so I want you to look when you're reading, what's the context and background? What's happening at this time that Machiavelli actually mentions? What background does he give to show the context, what's happening at the time in Florence or in the world? And maybe he doesn't mention much about context or background in your section. You'll just see what I put in there. But that's a component of argument. I think all of you will have claims. These are assertions. What concisely does he argue? What's he saying? And you can quote it, like put exactly what he says, put it in your own words, but try to stick tight to what the text really says. Reasons. Why does he believe it? What does he say are the reasons to these claims? And finally, if I asked you for this, what's the warrant that maybe he lists? Why are the reasons true? The explanation of the reasons. Perhaps he gives some evidence or examples. Perhaps he lists counter-arguments and rebuttals, what the opponent would say, how he'd defeat them, any concluding sentence or statements that he makes in the reading, and then any stylistic choices that he uses to make the argument compelling. So these are things I want you to look for, and I look forward to chatting with you about Machiavelli soon. Take care.